Welcome to another episode of Message from Mom, where we are busting the myth that mothers-in-law aren't necessarily monsters-in-law. And I'm joined by my lovely co-hosts who happen to be my daughters-in-law. And I have Kelly to the left of me.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I'm married to Beth's oldest son, Alex.
And Chelsea to the right of me.
Hi, I'm Chelsea, and I'm married to Beth's middle son, Andrew.
There we go, ladies. Okay, so let's lift our glass and a toast before we kick off this episode. So, because we know that you don't have to be a blood relative to love your relative. So, cheers.
Cheers.
It's another episode. We're having a lot of fun, I have to say. And this is an episode where it is my first, and we kicked this off a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. So we've already shared my first love.
My first love.
My first love and my first home.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so today we're going to talk about my first time living alone.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe we'll even kind of branch off because before we started today's podcast, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't really live alone until I was 60 years old.
Yeah.
Which is pretty funny because, I mean, we'll kick it off. So living alone. So I'll just give a little brief history. So grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. I had two brothers, mom and dad. So lived with them until I went away to college, one state over to Iowa, to the University of Iowa. And then I was in a sorority. So a house full of girls. I mean, I had a roommate my freshman year. We had to live in the dorm, so I had a roommate.
Yeah.
And then into the sorority. And then after college, then I had roommates because I needed roommates, not having a lot of money, right? So when I lived in Chicago, I had two roommates. Mm-hmm. And then when I came back to Omaha, then I lived with a dear friend of mine from high school, Lori, and then got married. And then, had a built-in roommate, and then that expanded to more built-in roommates. So we had a family of five. And then they left one by one, and then it was just Mac and myself. But then when he passed away, that really is the first time I lived alone. Isn't that crazy?
That is
That's
kind
so
of
cool,
crazy.
yeah.
Isn't it? It
is.
really is.
Yeah.
So anyways,
interesting.
so I didn't have that Sex in the City life, single girl life. I didn't have that.
Home life.
I did not have that. I always had somebody under my roof. But the past 5 years, I have lived alone. So it's been interesting.
Well, minus that year that Andrew lived with you.
That's right. That's right. I did have. But
That was the year I met him.
That's right. But there again, that was very
Said I live with my mommy.
That was serendipitous. I know he did. I live with my mommy. I live in the basement.
I was like, oh God.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So just a little context with that. So Andrew had been living in New York for many years and actually loved it, but he was really kind of tired of the grind.
Yeah.
I do know that. He was definitely getting tired of the grind, and the man loves golf. Does he not love golf?
He loves golf.
And it's a little easier to play golf in Georgia. Although I do have to say he fell in love with you. So that really is one of the reasons why he wanted to stay here.
Yeah.
Golf coming up a close second.
Yeah.
So, but yes. So Andrew did live with me for a year.
Yeah.
So I guess I've just been living the single life for 4 years. Yeah. So I guess now I am that boss girl.
Yeah.
Living not quite the Sex in the City life at
Not
65,
quite.
but anyway, it's interesting. So Kelly, how about you? When was the first time you lived alone?
Probably like truly alone was after I was divorced from my first husband and I got my own apartment in San Francisco. So I was 25 or thereabouts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 25, 26 maybe. Mm-hmm. Somewhere. No, I guess I was a little bit older, maybe 27. That's right. But yeah, so I was 27, finally had my very own apartment. Other than that, I had always lived with roommates because couldn't afford to live alone, especially in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Right?
So 20, and I will tell you, I had a beautiful apartment in a real crap building in the Tenderloin.
Oh.
But this was...
So for those of you who don't know San Francisco, so
yeah,
Kelly, sure. Actually, the Tenderloin is a very interesting district because it really is surrounded by, or used to be surrounded by, all these luxury, commercial, retail properties.
Yeah, it's this weird.
was.
It's a weird section of town, right downtown, pretty much, that was just like, it's always been kind of a blighted community. They have a lot of social services, and they have for a long time in that neighborhood. So there's always been a certain amount of, or a certain number of, people who are down and out and having hard times and stuff. So it's always, ever since I was a little kid, it's always been like that. But it was really the only place I could afford to live in the city.
Right.
But the thing is like the architecture and the buildings, even if they may not be well kept on the outside, like the apartments themselves are usually pretty beautiful, like, because they're all old from the 20s and
the big windows and
big bay windows. And it was a studio apartment with a huge walk-in closet that felt like a second bedroom, or felt like a bedroom. And it was a great apartment. I absolutely loved it. I did have to step over, passed out drunk people on my doorstep as I would go to work in the morning. But I was young enough at that point that, I just went on my way and it didn't get me down too much. That changed over time. But yeah, I loved living. I didn't mind living with my husband. He was a easy person to live with, but it was just really nice to have my own space that I could do my own, decor and have all my own stuff. And so I actually really, really enjoyed living alone that first time. It was great.
Okay. And Chelsea, how about you? Your first time living alone?
The first true time living alone, oh my gosh, can't talk, was when I moved to New York for grad school. So I guess I was maybe like 21. And I got a studio apartment kind of right on the outskirts of Gramercy. I think I was technically like in Gramercy, which is a really nice area in New York. But I was like one or two blocks over from Gramercy Park. And I guess I probably would have had a roommate had I known anyone in my grad school program going up there, but I didn't know anyone that lived in New York at the time. I didn't know anyone that was in my program. And the thing about NYU with their grad school students is that they actually don't allow grad school students to live in student housing.
Oh, yeah.
So that
wasn't even an option.
That wasn't an option for me, because I probably would have done that my first year just because I didn't know anyone and I didn't really know the city that well. So that was kind of an experience finding that apartment, because finding apartments in New York, maybe it's the same in San Francisco, but basically I remember it got to like a month before I was supposed to live up there and I didn't have anywhere to stay.
Oh, gosh.
And it was like you were looking, but then they require like an insane amount of basically to like proof of income to the point where I think my grandparents had to co-sign on the lease.
We will pay.
And, well, and to be fair, they were the ones that were paying the rent at the time because I wasn't making any money because I was in grad school and didn't have a job. But they had to do it, I think, almost with my mom because it was like so insane, like the level that they
5 times,
right?
Yeah,
it is.
or something like that.
San Francisco used to be like that too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you practically
really
had to
hard.
give your firstborn, and used to be.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like these days, but it used to be. I mean, you'd be standing in line to look at the property,
Yeah.
and there was like 30 people in line, and everybody had already pre-filled everything
competitive,
out.
yeah.
So it was very
I
competitive.
don't know if anyone else was looking at the one that we found, but yeah, I don't even remember how I found it, but I found it. And then basically like almost like 3.5 or 3 weeks before I moved up there, that's when we like
found it.
We found it, and I don't think we actually signed the lease until we got up there, like when we were moving in, like the day before, which was wild.
Yes.
And we signed that, and then basically we literally signed the lease before we even went into the actual apartment to be like,
Sight unseen. Here you go.
because I was like, I'm not going to have a place to live. And I do remember, because obviously didn't know really anything about New York, and like obviously like Brooklyn, and like there's really nice spots in Brooklyn and Queens, but a lot of my classes were really close to that Gramercy area because they were close to Union Square and then Washington Square Park. And so my grandparents wanted me to be like in the city because they were like, well, we don't want you to have to take the train in every day, which would have totally been fine. Like I would have gotten used to it, but you just don't know if you're, a girl from Georgia and you're going up to New York and they were like, no, you're not living in Brooklyn.
There are no subways in your future.
But it was a really cute little studio apartment. And I had a doorman. The doorman wasn't 24/7, but he was like up to a certain amount. And then I think it was like after midnight, you know, you had to use your key to get in, which was like super easy. There was an elevator, which was nice.
That's nice.
And then
had one of those.
yeah, we had, because I was on the highest level, which was the 6th floor. So there was an elevator, which was nice. And it was kind of, and there was actual laundry on my floor. Like not in the unit, but like literally. So basically it was kind of a hallway of, you know, apartments. And there was a woman's unit right here and then mine, and the laundry was right outside my door basically, which was super nice because it was basically like in my unit essentially.
Yeah.
So that was great. And there was laundry units on every floor. So if that one was taken, then you could go down to a different floor
It wasn't just
and do it,
Yeah.
which was nice. But I remember that experience was interesting because the woman that lived next to me, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if she had like Tourette's or there was something going on, but like I remember the first time my mom came to visit me. And my mom came to visit me. We were getting ready, and like she would just say random like words like very loudly, but it was like so sporadic. Like the words didn't really make sense.
Right.
And my mom was like doing her makeup, and she was like, "What is happening over there?" And I was like, "Oh, that's normal." I was like, "She does that."
Yeah.
I'm like, "I don't know."
Okay, Mom.
I'm like, "She seems nice." Like,
It's okay. So did you keep that apartment the entire time?
the
you were
whole
there?
time.
That's
Yeah.
nice. You didn't have to move.
I didn't have to move. And basically you walked in, the kitchen was immediately to the left. It was super tiny. I broke several wine glasses in that kitchen because there wasn't a dishwasher. And so, you know, you'd be washing and then all of a sudden you turn around and then you're like, great. And then it was like the bathroom to the right, then the like living room space with like a little like dining area. And then you walk up these wooden stairs to the actual sleeping loft, which funny enough, I never slept in the sleeping loft.
You never did?
No, I always,
sleep?
well, because both sections, like my couch was like basically like a day bed. And so I just slept down there because I want to say it was my first month living in that apartment. I fell down the stairs and it was like actually really bad. Like
How many stairs? From the loft to the...
from the loft, the stair, it wasn't a lot of stairs, but it was steep.
Yeah.
Like it was a really steep, and I basically rode from the top like all the way down on my back.
Oh my God.
And after that, I was a little cautious.
Yeah. What year? Can you remind me what year you lived in San Francisco? In the first apartment that you guys lived in.
2012 to 2015.
Okay, so I kind of barely missed you because like I had left that apartment in the Tenderloin after about a year and a half or so because the same apartment company, they owned several buildings throughout the city, and they had an apartment come available in a building that was like 3 streets up. And it was on Sutter Street, which was like, and the difference between being like in the lower Tenderloin and the upper Tenderloin was huge. Like that little bit of hill meant a very big difference in like quality of all things. Like,
well, Sutter Street is a
it was
beautiful
huge.
street.
Yeah,
And
it really
and
was.
Chinatown is starts on Sutter, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, it was probably like
Sutter and
eight
Bush or
blocks
something.
east of where I was at Sutter and Bush. But I moved into this building called the Pharaoh, and it was like it was from the 20s, and it was in this Egyptian style. So like all of the interior was like had crazy Egyptian murals and like all these crazy details. But I'm trying to remember, and I can't. I'll have to maybe look it up in the course of a conversation. But like there was a Hitchcock movie that was filmed in part of that building. And then also under the stairs, there was a trap door that led to a speakeasy that was functioning
that was the cool thing
interesting.
about
during the Prohibition era. Yeah, it was so insane.
especially that area in San Francisco.
There were a lot of those places.
There were a lot of them.
It was really cool. It was such an awesome building.
Well, and Dashiell Hammett, he was an author, and he wrote The Thin Man that was actually turned into movies.
Yeah.
And he lived, and I think isn't there a Dashiell Hammett Street? I want to say
There is. Yeah, but I'm trying
It's
to
just a
remember.
cute
I feel
little
like
side street.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to say
almost
there's like a
alley.
little speakeasy that was on it.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And
I
it's
don't know,
like
that-
a true speakeasy
It
nowadays
is.
in that it's completely, you
It's
don't
a-
even know anything's there.
It's a really cool
Yeah.
little section. But Sutter Street, yes. I mean, there again, all the luxury, and back in the day, they probably closed now. I don't know what's going on in San Francisco, but all the beautiful, I mean, Prada, Banana Republic,
Oh, it was all
Flagship. I mean,
luxury.
everything was along
Maiden
Sutter
Lane
Street.
and
I
everything,
know,
Union Square. I mean, it's like,
beautiful.
it's really, I could never imagine living in the Tenderloin. I mean, even at the time I lived there, it was pretty terrible, but it's just gotten so much worse.
know.
And the shocking thing about it, that was like in the early and mid 2000s. And then I moved back to Alaska in the mid to late 2000s and then went to college in St. Louis. And after college in St. Louis, I moved back to San Francisco and I was like, I'll just move back to the Tenderloin because that's probably all I can afford. I was shocked even in that short period of time, the cost of the crappy apartments in that neighborhood had gone up so high. Like I was like, there's no way I can even, in that same, and the neighborhood had only gotten worse.
Right.
So it was just
I
like,
know.
kind of,
It's very interesting.
yeah.
Well, I have a question for you, Chelsea. So did you and Andrew, did your time in New York overlap or were they separate?
No, I
already
think
gone?
that I left the year before he got there.
Okay.
Because I think I left in 2013 and he got there in 2014.
Okay.
So yeah, we were like
Seems about right.
ships and
In the night.
in the
Ships in
night.
the night.
Yeah,
Yep.
you met in Georgia.
Yep, we met
okay,
here.
so living alone, what would you say are the high points and what are the low points of living alone?
Oh, there's a lot of high points.
There's a lot of high points.
Oh.
So, okay, I remember when I lived alone, this is actually going to sound so ridiculous, but I feel like I would like get home and I mean, obviously, so I was, for those that don't know, I went to grad school for dance education. So a lot of my classes involved like dance. I mean, we'd like literally have
physically
to
dancing.
physically dancing. We'd have to do ballet classes and some of them were actually like in the classroom and we were, doing actual paperwork, but I feel like I would get home and then like immediately like every single article of clothing would come off and I'm like, this is so freeing because no one lives here.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
it's great.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, you could like walk around in
You
your
can walk
underwear
around naked. You can,
and
that's right.
I'm like, it was
I mean,
fine.
I suppose you could still do that with your husband if you live with your husband.
Well, no, you could, but just like not with a roommate, I
Yeah.
guess.
Right.
Certainly not.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Having roommates was hard. Like if I ever had to go back to that for any reason, even for a short length of time,
Yeah.
I would
There
not
is
do
no
it.
way I could have a roommate again. It was very challenging. I remember when I went off to college and my roommate and I did not get along.
Oh, I have
no.
some terrible roommate
at all.
stories.
And she was horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was horrible. And she
Yeah.
was like, so we didn't have any air conditioning in the dorm and it's hot in August. And I had this really big fan to keep us cool. And she would turn it off at night because she didn't like the noise. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm dying here.
Especially at night. It's the
You know,
worst when you're
and
trying to
but
sleep.
yeah,
Oh my
but
gosh.
yes, we so it did not start off well.
Yeah.
We ended up coming to some agreements
Yeah.
and but that was my first thing, and I'm like, what is going on here? I can't have my way.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like
Yeah.
I'm hot. And you don't like the noise? I mean, so who wins? I mean, she always won because I was just like, okay,
Yeah.
I had a
whatever.
roommate that this was I think it was my freshman year in college too, but I had a roommate that basically so when you're a freshman in college, obviously you have to do the meal plan because there's no kitchen
Right.
in your dorm room. Well, somehow she got out of having to do the meal plan. I don't know how. But basically her parents would come and they would bring, like, how you have like the mini fridge in your dorm and then you have a microwave.
Sure.
They would bring her like all of this like food packaged up that she would then shove all of it in the fridge and the freezer. So I could barely put like an orange juice in there, like a little mini orange juice could barely fit.
So her parents would meal prep for her.
They would meal prep and then she would just like, but here was the problem. is that she would eat the food from the container, she put it in the microwave, and then she wouldn't properly clean out the containers, and she'd put the containers in her closet.
Oh no.
So after like living with her for a month, our dorm started to smell.
Right.
And I was like, what is that smell? So I remember there was one day that I came home and she wasn't there, and I knew she wasn't going to be back for a while. So I was like going around the room and I was like, where is the smell coming from?
Yeah.
And finally I found it. And so there was also a second part to this. So she never did her laundry, like ever.
Right.
And I went to school. This was when I was in Alabama in undergrad. And I mean, you walk outside and you're sweating in the summertime. Well, I then confronted her about both situations through Facebook.
Through Facebook.
I was like,
as every good roommate does. I'm going to not talk face to face. I will.
I was literally
you.
like, there's no way I can say this to her face. And then her reasoning, she literally said her excuse as to not doing her laundry, which was also starting to smell, was that
Terrible.
she said, oh, well, I'm a music major and I'm not a dance major like you, so I don't really sweat. And I was like, what? I'm like, we're in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. You walk outside and you're sweating.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm like, okay, you don't even wash your underwear? Like, I can understand not
she had
washing
30 pairs,
jeans,
30.
you know?
One for every day.
Oh, I had a roommate in San Francisco for a very short period of time who, instead of, because apartments in San Francisco, well, maybe all apartments built in the 20s all over the world are like this. I don't know, but they always have these giant walk-in closets, right? That could be second bed or could be bedrooms. This girl wouldn't let anyone sleep in wouldn't let us turn the closet into it because she needed the closet. And come to find out, it was because she would just let all of her dirty clothes pile up in the closet. Instead of washing them, she would just throw them away and buy new clothes.
What? Oh my God.
It was the most insane. But the thing is it took her a really long time to throw away the dirty clothes. So like there would be a heap of dirty clothes in this closet.
How did she afford that?
So she was a hostess at a restaurant, and I think she just made really, really good tips.
Wow.
Really good tips to be able to just
Throw away your clothes.
Yeah, she was a very beautiful, statuesque, like Persian
interesting.
model. Like she was very incredibly beautiful, and I think she made a lot of cozy relationships with the gentleman that came to the restaurant.
Gotcha.
So,
Well, isn't it interesting that our experiences with roommates sometimes lets us love living alone that much more?
yeah, I know it's true.
Yeah.
Because you don't, I mean, there are interesting quirks that you have to deal with
Yeah.
when you live with a roommate.
Yeah.
I'm sure that we all have
Right?
the quirks too.
I'm
but
sure.
Well, I was actually going to say, like, in terms of the number of things that I really enjoy about living alone, I think Alex could probably come up with a list double mine. That is his issues of living with me. We are very different in a lot of ways for a lot of little things, but like, I mean, it's nothing like make or break, but it's all stuff that's like completely part of my nature and is habitual to who I am as a person.
Right.
And he just happens to be diametrically opposite from those things.
Right.
So we've had, and we still do, and it'll be a struggle in some ways for the rest of our lives. I mean, we'll always have little,
Right. But a
nits
marriage is so much
about
different
that.
than a roommate, because
Oh,
a
for
roommate is like, it's
Yeah.
really easy to break up with a roommate
yeah.
over small or large
yeah.
differences. It really is. Whereas in a marriage, it's like, okay, I mean, you do.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you learn to love those things, or just learn to sort of like, okay, that's just
I know.
the way it is.
Right? Yes. You accept someone for who they are. Whereas with a roommate, I just really kind of didn't really want to accept who they were, I guess.
Well, there's
It's a
certain
little bit
things. I mean, there's certain things that you
We're
just shouldn't
selfish.
accept.
Yeah.
right?
Like, I think people need to wash their clothes,
Yeah.
Yes,
and,
I definitely do.
clean their dishes properly. Like,
Those are two really big things.
Yeah.
I'm not really asking a lot here.
I know. These are basics. These are just the
And I wouldn't
normal
even say like I'm not
basics.
like I actually think me and Kelly living together, we'd probably kill each other. Because I am
Apparently
probably
I have a very low tolerance for.
well, I'm probably more like AJ in the sense of like I do get in bits of where I'll clean the whole house and like everything has to be perfect.
Right.
but then I very easily let it like fall.
Right.
So like on weeks like this week, for instance, I was really busy.
Right.
So definitely Andrew's been more of the cleaning, but Andrew's version of clean isn't really.
He's organized.
He's organized.
He's not necessarily clean.
Yeah. Like he's not in there. Like I'm the one that cleans like the toilets or like vacuums or sweeps the floor or is wiping down the countertops. He's like, oh, there's a big pile of clothes here and the clothes might be clean. They just haven't been folded. And that's like what irks him.
Right. Right.
Whereas like me, I'd rather have like a clean
Pile
and a clean toilet and a clean countertop. It doesn't so much bother me that the clothes aren't folded.
It's really okay.
Right.
You know?
Clean. Right. Yes.
It's funny how we work into so here's an interesting thing. So Chelsea and I have both had the experience of living solely alone in our formative adult years. You did not have that opportunity. So when you get to the point of being in your 60s and you're suddenly living alone, like you've kind of like at that point you're kind of personal, the way you move around in a house and the way that you keep a house is kind of well established. So like what sorts of things do you feel like were the hardest once you found yourself living alone at an, older age, at a higher age?
Well, I think it's just companionship. Living alone has a lot of great aspects to it. I mean, yes. And I've definitely like just taken a shower and then I'm naked and then I just run to the laundry room, to throw something in the dryer and just, and that's kind of nice. I mean, I would probably do that with, with Max still being alive too, but there's a different element to that.
Right.
Or like, I can remember Annalise. We all know Annalise. She works for Saka. She runs the Poshmark store and she comes over every Wednesday night. But anyway, I had just sat down with a meal of popcorn. She's like, "Oh, that's my favorite, girl boss meal." And I'm like, "Wow, it has a name." I'm like, "I was just too lazy to make anything."
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So
there's a reason those things happen.
Right? There's a reason why those things happen. I would never in a million years would have eaten popcorn, with Mac alive.
Right.
So little things like that are like very freeing. It's
yeah.
like, wow, this
you
is
can
really,
do whatever.
I can do whatever I want to. I don't have to. I mean, we never really argued about like TV shows or anything like that. But
you can really watch what you want.
Right. I can dictate everything.
Without people coming along and shitting on what your TV show
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
That is a nice,
and
like,
Mac, he used to, he's like, "Oh, you're watching that?"
Yeah.
Andrew does.
Yes, I am. Thank
Andrew does
you
that all
very
the time.
much.
Alex does it to
all
me
the time.
constantly, yeah.
That's why, like, when he goes out of town for work, I'm actually like the first. It does get if he's gone for like more than like 4 days. I'm like, this is kind of lonely. But I'm like the first like 2 days. I'm like, let me order. Like, I'll go and get the meal that I want.
Right?
Like, order out.
Yeah.
Sit down, watch my show. I'm like, this is fabulous.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So those are the fun little things that you get to do.
Yeah.
But and you just brought this up. So one of the things that really, and I probably am still adjusting to, it can get lonely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's just me, myself, and I.
Right.
And I'm very busy during the day, and work, and I have I have a lovely schedule, and I go off to Pilates, and talk to my friends at Pilates, and my schedule is, as I said, very, very full. But come 7 p.m. at night, it's not so full, and it's just me.
Yeah.
It's me filling in the
Evenings
time.
are always the hardest.
Evenings can be really challenging sometimes,
I know.
and I have found myself. I mean, I really do, and now I'm really like trying to get better about being in a routine. From 7 p.m. until 10 p.m. I mean, it's my downtime, but still, it's like okay, I kind of really need to fill that in, so I'm not as lonely, or on the nights where I am feeling lonely, that I can turn to something.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So that probably really is the downside of living alone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, it's totally
I think
true.
there is a loneliness to it, and I'll be curious, and you can. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can leave it in the comments down below. But those of you that do live alone, what you love about it, and is there, will there always be a little bit of loneliness? I'm kind of thinking that there. I mean, now that it's been 5 years, I kind of think I'll just always
have a
face
little
that.
bit of it. Yeah.
A little bit of that, but it's really. But
Well,
also
even
it's
when
really
I was
okay too.
when I was in New York in my early 20s, because so it got lonely in the wintertime because it obviously gets cold up there, and
Right.
I feel like for me, we would still go out and do things, but I'm from Georgia. Like, I don't do the cold.
Right.
And so a lot of the time, it's like, okay, yeah, no, I'm not. Like, I'll just stay in. That's when it got a little bit more lonely than, you know, it normally would be.
Right.
And it's darker outside.
Yes.
Darker, yeah.
Yes, it's dark at 5 o'clock, and then it's cold, and but
Yeah.
sometimes I don't know in the wintertime, because I will binge watch TV. I mean, now that we have that
That's
option
more-
now
yeah.
on TV, so I can fill my time like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas in the summertime, I kind of feel like I need to be out doing something because it's
Yeah.
beautiful and it's
For sure.
You know, I need to be a little bit more active,
Yeah.
or I don't know.
Definitely.
But it's definitely a learning curve to
Yeah.
be on your own, especially when you have been married or, you know, had a family. And then I think there's that progression, and empty nesters go through this too. It never really bothered me to be an empty nester. I mean, it was like so much fun to watch the boys
Like, get
grow.
out of here.
Not even so much that, but just, you know, watch them grow and turn into their own people.
Yeah.
Which was
For
really,
sure.
it was really a lot of fun,
Yeah.
you know, to see that. But I still had Mac, you know, so I never went through that empty nest syndrome.
Yeah. That's nice.
Yeah.
But I do know, you know, people,
Some people really,
they
some
really
folks
do
really have a hard time.
really
with it.
hard.
But you know, something else that's interesting about, so you, not experiencing your first time living alone until after, you know, you were well into adulthood. It's, and Chelsea, maybe you can talk about this from your experience a little bit, but like when you don't move in with a significant other or your husband or wife or whatever, until you've kind of developed a sense of who you are as a person living alone and establishing like how you like to keep house and how you like things to look and whatever, that moving in with someone after you've already established somewhat of that, and then that kind of melding together of couples separate aesthetics and like, you know, ways of moving about
Right.
a space and
Yeah.
and then growing together. Like I think there's,
Right.
you know, it's a very interesting evolution that
is.
happens. And when you've had time to live alone and kind of establish that as a single person, you know, did you find that challenging when you and Andrew moved in together, or?
Not like too challenging because I feel like we are pretty similar on a lot of things. But I am glad that we lived together before getting married.
Yeah.
Like I'm a big advocate of living with someone before you marry them. And I know like, you know, obviously there's certain aspects or like religions that advise against that.
Yeah.
And I get that too, but I do like, I think living with him prior to getting married really allowed us to be like, okay, we do really like not only love but like each other, and we can live together and we have fun together, because I feel like I guess we lived together for maybe like 2 years before we ended up getting married, I want to say. But like those 2 years I found were really helpful in just getting to know each other as people. But I mean, as much as Andrew would say like, oh, he's the cleaner one, he's the more organized one.
Right.
I'm definitely
You're cleaner.
the
he's more
cleaner.
organized.
But we're like
There's a
clean in
difference.
different ways.
Yeah, there is a difference.
There is a big difference. There's a huge difference.
But you know, like he also gets kind of messy too. Like we're not like, neither of us are like super anal about things, you know, which works.
That is good. Yeah.
Well, and one thing when, you know, just going from college roommates, you know, so a big sorority house, then just a roommate. So my first roommate in Chicago, she was actually kind of scary. I actually had to,
Why?
I had to leave that relationship.
Oh my goodness.
Why was she scary?
Well, did you ever read the book Looking for Mr. Goodbar? It was very
No.
popular at the time. So it was, and Diane Keaton starred in the movie. So the book was turned into a movie. So basically, it's a single woman who's going to the bars, you know, looking for love in all the wrong places. And so this roommate would go to the bars and bring home strange men. I never knew.
Just like that she would just like meet that night. Oh gosh.
That's a little scary.
It was very scary. And I never knew what I was going to be walking home to.
Right.
It was very unsettling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's kind of
yes. And then one time there was a big fight that erupted, and then that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I can remember, calling my parents and what do I do? I'm so scared and all
Well,
that.
I think too,
So
like
I had to call the landlord. I actually,
Oh,
I had to get out of the lease.
yeah.
Because she wasn't going to let me get out of the lease. She was going to hold me to it. So I had to take matters into my own hands.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big growing up
Yeah.
curve,
Yeah.
definitely for me. And then I found two. So then I moved in with two girls, and they were really. I mean, they didn't have anything like that. I mean, we definitely had our issues, but nothing like that.
Yeah.
So
Well, you have to be respectful of, I mean, even in marriages, like you have to let people know, like, hey, this person's coming over, like and same thing in roommate situations.
Yes.
You have to make sure that that's okay.
Right.
Like, I'm not just going to invite someone over and then not tell Andrew or vice versa.
Right. Yeah. Very weird.
What if I'm walking around in my underwear?
I know, right? It's like, hello, come on in.
Like,
Yeah.
so
that was a very that was, as I said, that was a very scary, but a huge learning curve for me also too.
yeah.
But when I married Mac, I was 25, so still kind of a kid.
Did you guys live together before you got married, or did you get married first?
We got married.
Okay. How was that?
It was fine.
Did it feel?
It just seemed like really natural.
It was fine.
It
Yeah.
really did. And he was, he super easy.
Did he already have a place that you moved into, or
He had a really cute apartment. He was one of those men that really had a beautiful apartment that I always loved to go over, and I would spend the night, things like that. So loved his apartment, loved his little lifestyle. But we left that apartment. We got a duplex. That was our first. Because we had a dog.
Yeah.
And we needed a little bit more room than what his apartment had. But he did. He had the cutest apartment. I can still picture it to this day.
Yeah.
And typical male, he had a tomato and a beer in his fridge. Because that's a tomato and a beer. Because he loved tomatoes. He did not cook.
That's so
But he always had the hotel.
Yeah.
To fall back
Right.
into the hospitality industry. And then, through the years, the hotel was always our second home and always a great place to eat. And I never had to worry when I left town because he didn't cook, could care less to ever learn how to cook. He had two dishes that he made. He made great sandwiches, and then he would cut up hot dogs, and he'd have his secret sauce. And he'd tell the boys, "This is my secret sauce," which is ketchup and mustard.
Sounds like Andrew.
It's ketchup and mayonnaise.
Yeah.
The only thing Andrew can really cook is rice and meat.
Yeah.
And he assumes that that's all I would ever want to eat.
Yeah.
Like, no, that we don't eat a vegetable. Like, what's lettuce?
What? No.
What's a pepper?
Yeah, that was Mac. Could care less, but yes, he had the cutest apartment, but he was actually he was very, in many ways, he was really very easy to live with. But he was a clean nut, kind of like you.
Yeah,
Kelly.
I know. He and I have we bonded over our cleaning.
Yes, he was a little OCD about cleaning, and I'm more. I kind of think you need germs in your life a little bit. Kind of think.
The only thing that I will say that drives me crazy that Andrew does is, and he always does this on my side of the bed. When we're packing for a trip, he'll take his suitcase and he'll put it on the bed. Well, he'll put the whole suitcase on the bed. And I obviously don't know he's doing that until I come upstairs, and it drives me crazy. I'm like, dude, if you're going to do this, I'm like, put it on your side. I'm like, second of all, just don't put the suitcase. I'm like, that suitcase has been everywhere.
Yeah.
Put it on the floor.
Yeah.
And he like doesn't understand why he gets so mad about it, but that drives me crazy.
That would drive me bananas.
Because like I am like you, like we need some germs, but I'm also like, please don't put your suitcase that's been in 5 million airport bathrooms on my bed.
I'm totally fine with germs. Where I draw the line are, just it's all the smudgy bits and all the yucky.
I don't really like that
things.
either. But there again, living by yourself, it's just me that has to look at it. So it's just like sometimes it's kind of nice.
Well, I will tell you guys,
my eyesight's failing as I get older, and so I if I don't have my glasses or contacts on, I can't even see. Or smudges.
I can't either, and
it's very free.
34.
As I walk naked, you got any glasses on? I can't see.
The only thing,
if you can't see them, they can't see you. How about that?
The only concern I get with walking naked in our current house is if like a Amazon delivery person is coming up to the door, and I'm like, oh,
I know.
Sorry. Luckily for us, it's always the same guys, so it would be like, "Hey, what's up?"
Yeah.
But no, I was gonna say we talked about it in my first home, and I talked about my cabin in Alaska, and one of the things that was my favorite about living without running water was never having to clean a bathroom.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I still think about that aspect of that lifestyle, like while it was challenging and hard, but every time I am scrubbing the toilet nowadays, I'm like, man, there was a time when I didn't have to do that.
I just had to get in my car and go to the bathroom.
Not really, but
I
you know, yeah.
Just joking.
Yeah.
Just joking.
But
But
there's something, I mean, I don't know. I really enjoy keeping house. I feel like it's, you know, and I think we've mentioned this before in a different podcast, but like I really do, as much as sometimes I don't like doing certain things about keeping house, like I like it a certain way, and I get a sort of meditative moment from spending time making it that way, I guess is and then I enjoy the result of it, right? So I feel like while it may rub my husband the wrong way in terms of I may be anal retentive about this, that, or the other thing and keeping things clean or whatever, there is a certain aspect of like calm and serenity that I get from A, doing the task, and then B, enjoying the result of that task that really kind of keeps me grounded and makes me feel like I have control in certain aspects of my life. And this is one of those things that I can sort of enjoy that aspect of, you know, that part of it. So
For sure.
and I do, and I appreciate that too, because I do think that and we've talked about this too, I think in the segment where we were talking about our first home. I mean, your home is your sanctuary.
Yeah.
It
For
is.
sure.
So whether you're there as a family or as a couple or all by yourself, it really is your place to get away from the rest of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so having that, I mean, I'm so very thankful. I do have this really beautiful home.
Yeah.
And even if it's just, you know, me, myself, and I here half the time, I still like to have it in place and, you know, a place for everything and everything in its place. I really do like that. And
For sure.
And we were getting ready for photo shoots just recently. And because I don't always have my closet like clean and that all of that really kind of drives me crazy. But when I actually do make that, you know, that giant effort to get everything done, I'm like, oh, wow,
so
I love
good.
it when
Yeah.
everything is even my closet is organized. I love that because that's the one thing. I mean, when you're putting 10 outfits together, you know, I
It's
mean,
a lot.
it's I don't know. That's the one room that really does take a beating, but I like an orderly home. I think that's important whether you're living solo or, as I said, couple or family.
Yeah.
Very, very
Whether
important.
it's an apartment or a house or a condo or whatever kind of space that you're in, whether you're renting or owning, like it's important to take pride in your space. It'll make your overall mental health, I think, a lot better and just help kind of give you
that Zen feeling.
Even if you don't know what to call it or what exactly the feeling is, there is something very
calming,
grounding and
grounding.
Just
I agree.
Really good about that.
So any other high points about living alone? I mean, what do you miss living alone?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, but I mean,
but I can say that sometimes, but you know, Alex travels for work, so
does Andrew.
I get glimpses of, you know, I have moments of having just me in the house by myself, which is a really nice change of pace, right? And I know that Alex really enjoys when I go away by, you know, and he's left home alone, so he can enjoy his space on his own. And I think that's actually and we talked about this in the other podcast that we did about time alone in a marriage.
Well, we had a momentary lapse here.
We did.
We might have a momentary lapse with our minds of getting back on board, but Kelly, you were just chatting about the opportunity to be alone in your home.
Yes. So I think even when people, when you're in a relationship or married or whatever, like it is nice to have that home alone time, and it makes me happy to have to be fortunate enough to have the situation my life where I do have companionship with my husband and we spend time together at home, but then also we do, you know, let each other have moments at home alone, which is just nice. Yeah.
Chelsea, how about you? Any other thoughts about living alone?
I mean, kind of the same thing. I get glimpses of it when Andrew travels, and which is nice.
It is
But
nice.
I mean, I do, I still miss him. Like if he's gone for a long period of time, then it's like, I do.
Yeah.
That's
The,
kind of nice though.
it
Because
is,
they do
yeah,
say that distance makes the heart grow fonder. I do
Yeah.
think that
Missing is
there's
nice.
yeah.
It's nice to have
it
a
is.
moment of
And then,
missing.
yes, and then they get to
I
they
will
come
say,
home.
like
It's
when
always
I go to sleep at night, I do feel better when he's like there because
Mhm.
just our house is so big that
Mhm.
that does feel
Yes.
lonely. But yeah.
Yes, it does. Well, I've often thought this too because I do date. I'm not dating anybody in particular right now, but I have thought if someone significant does come back in my life, I think I would really just like him to have his place and I keep my place
hmm
because there is an aspect of living alone that I really have become
Yeah.
accustomed to and that I do like. And I would just like
hmm
to, go, spend the night at his house and he can come spend the night at my house and then we can both spend the night at our own houses.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was really,
I like
I
that.
have thought about that. So
Yeah.
I have come a long way
Mm-hmm.
in that regard and truly appreciating living alone
hmm
Yeah.
at this point in my life.
Plus, you've
So
put a lot of sweat equity into
I
this
have,
house. So.
right? I love my house. I really love my
Yeah.
house. Yes. And as I said, when everything's in order, even my closet is in order.
hmm
It's a very peaceful and calming place to
Yeah.
be.
For sure.
Okay, ladies. Well, I think we have wrapped up another episode of Message from Mom, where we are busting the myth that mothers in law aren't necessarily monsters in law.